You got any plans today? Big day, big birthday plans?
No, just trying to win the next game on the schedule. I know that's not the most entertaining news to report, but one thing I think with the birthdays, with the social media and all, it's I obviously hearing from my family and stuff's always cool, but former players, today Brandon Francis, Norrance, a lot of guys from different teams we've coached. That's kind of a cool thing. Thinking back in my lifetime before you had the social media and all. Not so much, You look for those phone calls, and then on the birthday, it's impossible to take every call. But I think with technology, a lot of bad, but obviously some good too. And I think that'd be a great example of the goodness of technology. It's great to hear from those guys, and I'll try to return all those texts over time, especially to the former players. But thank everybody for reaching out today.
All right, Eric Kelly.
Coach, I guess just the first question. We kind of talked about it last week. I think it was last week when we talked to you. But kind of how have you guys utilized this even more extended time off than what maybe you thought you'd have even last week?
Well, it's been unique. It's not just the time off. It's the uncertainty during the time off when the next game was coming. So consistent with what we try to do in our locker room is just, put it out there, tell the truth. This year's Texas Tech team's another veteran-led team. So it's not like we got a bunch of young guys in there that we've got to worry about how to message things. With these guys, whether it be the returners or Marcus, JB, Mac, these older transfers, we just put it out there. So we've literally, just kind of lived in reality. Started with that first game getting canceled. We just said, hey, here's the deadline that the Big 12 is going to tell us. Then obviously with the two TCU games, there's about 4 or 5 different scenarios. So the minute we get the information, we tell the players. So it's been a challenging week, not necessarily just because of the time off, but because of the, the lack of information when we're playing, who we're playing.
Now you guys move on to a Kansas team that you guys saw in that little 2-game period back in December. Obviously, a couple months ago, how have you guys changed since the last time you played the Jayhawks?
Well, I think we're definitely a better team now than we were in November and December. No doubt about that. We've got to make that one more push as March nears, and then ultimately we'll have to make that second push to be relative in March. But watching these games, I think the 2 Big 12 games before the break were Kansas. What was the second one? Was it at Oklahoma maybe? Yeah, I think we're a better team since then. And that's always been by design. When you have new players like us, it's always been kind of a journey for us. So I think we've got a stronger identity now than we had earlier in the season. It's just time for us to play our best. March is right around the corner. This is how our sport works.
And with Kansas, obviously they were known for having talented bigs. It seemed like Udoka Azubuike was there for 20 years, but now they have David McCormick, who's talented but in his own way. What kind of different look does he bring than a guy like Azubuike is?
Well, McCormick's a pro. I mean, he's arguably the best big guy in the Big 12. He's averaging a double-double. He's the reason for their success over the last month. The day we play Kansas, they've got 10 wins in the Big 12. Obviously Baylor's been a great story in our league this year, but they just haven't played as many games as the rest of us. So it's been a very kind of asterisk-filled season, in my opinion. I would tell you Kansas is peaking at the right time. 5 guys averaging double figures. They have an offensive identity, a defensive identity. The expectations and standards of excellence are so strong in Lawrence that lose a couple games in a row, it's like the world's ending. But those of us that know this league, like myself, and know Coach Self and understand the talent on that roster, guys, this is a team that's in the fight for a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, could easily be in another Final Four.
Let's go to Don Williams.
Chris, do you have an idea on the games that have been missed? Do you have an idea for the feasibility of making them making them up and how you would like to see them made up?
Yeah, all we know at this point, Don, Kirby and those guys might know a little bit more. But from my vantage point as the coach, the information that's gotten to us at the coaching level is, the Big 12 created this schedule with the 1 week for makeup games. But there hasn't been anything really determined yet. I would assume just from my common sense meter that they've got to tell us sooner than later than what that last week's going to look like. It's not just as simple as each school playing their makeup games, because some schools have as many as 4 or 5 games. Some schools might not have any. Some schools might have 2. So there's going to be some decisions taking place at some point. Me personally, whether that starts with the level playing field, everybody should have the same number of home games or away games. Maybe that's the way we look at it. I'm sure the Big 12 is going to look at it from what is the best thing we can do to get as many teams in the tournament as we can. Obviously, there's no denying the special team that Baylor has right now, or some of those decisions made to put Baylor in a situation to make sure they get the 1 seed. I don't have those answers. And I really haven't spent enough time to have a strong personal opinion either. It's my understanding that last week will be used for makeup games. Kirby said something about, there's a cap on that. They're not going to let anybody play more than 3 games that week. That makes sense to me. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. As we sit here today, we've got 2 games with TCU, a game with Iowa State, and a game with Baylor, I believe. So we're not going to be able to get all 4 of those in. So we really wait to see what the league tells us.
Also, what's it been like these last couple of weeks from a planning standpoint? You think you're playing Baylor, then you're not. You think you're playing TCU on this day, then you're not. You think you're playing TCU here or there, then you're not. And now you're on to Kansas. But I mean, how much time have you actually spent on the court with the guys in each of those game planning for a specific team scenarios?
Yeah, I think obviously in the office it's been a tornado. From a coaching standpoint, we're working to prepare, but we've really been hesitant to give the players until we knew the exact outcome. We were a day into TCU prep. We're now a day into Kansas prep. But we have spent some time. When there was major uncertainty, we were just working on us. So if anything, during this break, there's been more, concentration on us, our offense, our defense, the things we can control. Today we're in day 2 of Kansas prep, but still with this game, with the weather, I'm looking around, if it was up to me, we would already be on the bus heading to Lawrence. But people that make those decisions, those aren't my decisions to make. So I just remain very hopeful that we're going to be able to get to Kansas.
All right, let's go to Joe Yeager.
Yeah, Coach, a different sort of a question here. If you could create an all-defensive team out of all the players you've coached all the way from back at UT to the present, who would be on that starting 5?
Probably going to need some time to think about that off the top of my head. It would be hard to keep Tariq Owens off that team with his rim protection. It would be hard to keep Chris Jones off that team the way he guarded the ball for us at Angelo State. He's having a great pro career in the Euro League right now. And we've had some great defensive players. I love questions like that. It's kind of, most people sit around at the dive bar with napkins drawing up X's and O's, or maybe your favorite movies of all time. I love kind of thinking about players and teams. To me, it's the old debate, do you want me to name the best 5 basketball players in history, or do you want me to put the best team together? And that'd be the same thing with defensive. That's fun to think about, but obviously you'd want to be able to guard the ball, and you'd want to protect the rim. Ball screens are such a big part in today's game, so the more versatile guys you have defensively that can guard the ball screens in different ways, that's important. One of my all-time favorite Coach Knight stories, Coach is one of those guys that he was going to ask you a question from time to time, and the answer could not be, I don't know. That would piss him off more than anything. You had to kind of be prepared. It was almost like you had to have a standard answer in your back pocket for whatever question he threw your way. But he also would kind of sniff out, kind of yes man. He didn't want that either. He really wanted to know what you thought. It's one of the great things about Coach Knight. But one time we were on the road, I think driving to Liberal, Kansas, Seward County, going to see, I think, Devon Giles. That's not too bad of a drive, from Lubbock up into Kansas. Much quicker to drive that than try to fly it in some way. But anyway, he would always ask, hey, what's the most important thing with any defense? And I think my young self, I might have said something about aggressiveness or something like that. And I'll never forget his answer. He goes, "You've got to be able to guard the ball, boy." And then spending the next 8 or 9 years with him at all the different lunches and dinners and talking and clinics and stuff, I heard him talk about that topic a lot. But his thing is you got to be able to guard the ball. Now, you can guard it different ways. Some years you're blessed to have a Ronald Ross that can pick the ball up 80 feet. Other years it might be more of an intelligent, contained game like a Davide Moretti. But there's no doubt about it, you got to guard the ball.
All right, go to Phil.
Coach, foul trouble has been a bit of an issue for Marcus Santos Silva this year. What are some things you can do to sort of try to limit that impact or help him not get into foul trouble?
Yeah, it's been more than somewhat of an issue. It has been an issue. We didn't recruit Marcus to play 20 minutes a game. The biggest thing between Marcus and the double-double production that we need, we expect, we recruited him and coach him for is really the minutes on the court. So with that in mind, I've always been kind of a guy that tries to coach through solutions. My idea of coaching is not sitting around bitching at the guys, telling them what they got to do, and then walking out of the room. My idea is addressing the problem, the issue, the goal, the objective, and then let's talk about how we're going to get there. So, the objective with Marcus is to play more minutes than he has. The problem has been foul trouble. And the objective, starts with discipline. Understanding what play is worth trying to make versus what play is not worth making. We try to do that through the film room, through individual workouts. We're trying to coach him better. The great thing about Marcus is this is one of my all-time favorite guys to coach. Guys, it's not even close. Because he wants to be great. He wants to win. With Marcus, it's never about himself. It's about the team. It's because he's a special guy. I predict he's going to play great here as March nears. I think he'll have one of the best endings to any season we've seen in Lubbock. That's my prediction because I know how hard he's working at it. But specifically with the fouling, he's just got to be a lot more disciplined and pick and choose his times to be aggressive.
Okay, and then my second one was, do you think transferring into the Big 12 from another conference, is there sort of an adjustment period, especially as a big man with the size and athletes in this conference, that can cause him to get into some of that foul trouble?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, every league has great players. Marcus last year played against a first-round pick twice, I think at Dayton. And so it's not a matter of the Big 12 just has better players. That's not necessarily true, but the Big 12 has consistently, every team has top guys. Every team in the Big 12 has a future NBA player on it. So the length, the athleticism, the size, no question about it. The other thing nobody wants to talk about, but I don't mind telling the truth, is there's adjustment with officiating in each league too. There's no doubt about it that some of these guys have a reputation, which they've earned. I get it. I was one of those guys that never really griped about the officiating, with Doak at Kansas. This is a big dude. He's physical. Every play he's in is a collision. I never envied the officials in those positions trying to make those calls. But I think when you get a guy that's played in this league 3 or 4 years, and all these individuals, officials have had these players, 10 games, 12 games, 16 games, then you got a good player coming in like a TJ Holyfield or a Chris Clark, and it's literally the first or second time these officials have seen these players. There is a human being element to this game. So what I'm trying to explain to Marcus is he's got to be careful. He's got to be disciplined. He's got to pick and choose his times.
All right, Ronald.
Coach, obviously a lot over this last week has been sort of completely out of your hands, but, coming into Saturday's game to play against a team like Kansas, who just played a game, a couple days ago, do you expect that to play any type of factor in the game? Just, if this team is sort of experiencing some rust just because they've been out of action for so long?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it will or not, but I know if it is, it can't be an excuse, right? Like we can't control that. We can't sit around after the game and ask the scorekeeper for 8 more points because we haven't played in 10 days and Kansas played last night. It's not how it works. So obviously college basketball is set up, to be a level playing field. But in this year with the COVID-19, weather you can't control, from time to time there isn't a level playing field. So, on one hand, somebody might tell you the rest might be an advantage for us. Another person might tell you, no, Kansas is in more of a rhythm. They played last night. I don't know. I know I am concerned of our game conditioning because you can get out there and you can practice, but there's a difference between practice and games. There always has been. There always will be. So in this game, we look to play maybe more people than we normally do early. We got to get our guys through the first couple 4-minute games. But it's something that it's real. It's the reality. We haven't played in a while. It'll be interesting to see how it goes down. But, from my job as the leader of this deal, I just make sure the players understand, no excuse culture. Like we can't control that. We can only control the 40 minutes that we play Saturday at 1 o'clock, and we'll have to play extremely well to have a chance to beat Kansas.
All right, Don, do you have another one? Don, did you have another question? Your hand's up.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up Joe's question on your all defensive team. How would you rate Mikey Marshall's defense? What characterized him?
Yeah, Mikey was a big time athlete. We use that word a lot in basketball. To me, one of the things when I think of like the elite athletes, I think of guys that don't get tired. Mikey Marshall could run a 4-minute, 30-second mile, 10 minutes after eating a burger and drinking a 6-pack. He was just an amazing athlete. He didn't get tired. And then obviously he was, long and athletic, very, very competitive. I think about Mikey a lot when I think about us putting together teams and trying to recruit and stuff. He's also a great guy in the locker room. I really don't ever remember Mikey being in a bad mood. I remember from time to time he would have a girlfriend in his life, that might make him out of whack for a while. But he was always a guy that came ready to play. He could take Coach Knight. He welcomed the coaching. He never took it personal. He's one of my all-time favorite players. I remember that 27-point game against Colorado that year, and he's a special player. Played pro ball for a long time. He's doing a great job right now in Lubbock, getting youth basketball going, trying to get the AAU basketball going here and working with young players. So Mikey's somebody I've always had a lot of respect for.
All right, Eric, finish it up.
Coach, you mentioned Kansas in their balanced scoring with 5 guys in double figures. What's that challenge in terms of a team where anyone can go off for 20 on any given night versus a team where you kind of know who the 20-point scorer is and the ball is going to be in his hand?
Well, it just makes it a lot harder for defensive game planning. Any coach would rather try to attack a team that had 1 or 2 scores versus 4 or 5. It makes game plans very multi-layered and more difficult to put together. I would like to think that our best teams present the same challenges to the opponents. That's why I still remain very optimistic with this year's team, what we can accomplish down the stretch. So I think this is an interesting Kansas team, guys, right? Like nobody's really talking about them, but they're sitting here. They got 10 wins. They're playing their best basketball. We've got to vote the all-conference guys here over the next week or so. You think of it, they got 4 or 5 guys hard to keep off the list. 3 or 4 of these guys at least are going to play in the NBA. Again, Baylor's kind of been the story of the Big 12 this year, which they agree. But I would tell you, there's a lot of teams in this league, us included, that can make a run. I don't think anybody's excited about playing West Virginia or Oklahoma or Kansas or Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, on down the line, as March nears. So this Kansas team has a defensive identity with the rim protection from McCormick. They're switching all 4 other spots. Obviously, Garrett's a first-team All-American defensive player. Offensively, they've got the 3 or 4 40% shooters they've always had. McCormick is a basket in the post. They got guys that know their roles. Their young guys are playing great. You know, 2 of their freshmen are playing their best basketball right now. And as long as Coach Self's over there, you know, they're going to be hard to play against. So, guys, they've lost two games since we beat them 3 years ago. Got still, you know, undeniably the best home court in college basketball, win-loss percentage. I think similar to how we've set it up here in Lubbock, trying to get as many fans to the games as we can. Kansas has executed a nice plan, so they'll have a home court advantage for sure Saturday. We're going to have to play our best game of the year.